Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. If you've been paying attention lately, you may have noticed that President Trump doesn't like the media, and the media fervently don't like him back. It is a hate-hate relationship, and it seems to be getting more contentious by the day. Consider CNN's headline just this morning. So the president, you saw yesterday, got a strikingly positive health evaluation. Here was CNN's take on it. Quote, overweight and doesn't exercise. In other words, doctors say he's fine, CNN calls him fat. This has been going on since the very beginning, except for the day that he lobbed cruise missiles into Syria, which delighted official Washington, as it always does. Virtually all of Trump's press coverage has been negative. Reporters don't simply disagree with the administration on policy, though they do. They feel personal contempt and loathing for the president, and their bosses have encouraged them to express it. In return, the president has struck back, dismissing the media as fake news. In many cases, he's been right. In others, he's just attacked news he doesn't like, just like all politicians do. Now, under normal circumstances, part of the remedy for this would be a responsible media establishment. Reporters would raise their standards and run fewer false stories. But these are not normal circumstances. Suddenly, there's a massive and eager audience for conspiracy theories. And that is exactly why they're going 24/7 with this Russian nonsense on some of the other networks. It is very lucrative for them. But there's another reason, too. In the America of 2018, victimhood is power. Instead of improving their journalism, it's easier for reporters to complain about how their voices are somehow being suppressed. The irony, of course, is that free expression really is under attack in this country at the moment, but most journalists don't seem to care or even notice it. Heterodox views are shouted off campus and often threatened with violence. Twitter routinely bans accounts for expressing viewpoints its executives oppose. Google tampers with its search results secretly to hide ideas it doesn't like and then fires employees who express those ideas. And yet, weirdly, the media applaud all of this. They are not defenders of free expression. They are guardians of orthodoxy, elite orthodoxy. Today, Republican Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona took their side. In a speech on the Senate floor, Flake compared Trump's criticism of the media to the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, one of history's most prolific mass murderers, because, of course, barking at Jim Acosta during a press conference is a lot like building death camps or staging a famine in Ukraine. No one ever accused Jeff Flake of being a genius, though he is right on one point. Government often is the opponent of free expression. Remember, for example, when President Obama kicked newspaper reporters off his campaign plane because their coverage of him wasn't favorable enough. You don't remember that? Well, it actually happened. Then there was the time the Obama administration threatened to ban Fox from the White House press corps because we didn't suck up hard enough, or the time the Obama administration subpoenaed the phone records from the Associated Press, or the time they named Fox News reporter James Rosen in a criminal complaint. Back in 2010, President Obama actually described this news organization, Fox, as, quote, destructive for the long-term growth of a country that has a vibrant middle class. In other words, Fox News causes poverty. Now, these attacks on press freedom went on for years. Where was Jeff Flake then? We don't remember him comparing Barack Obama to Joseph Stalin or even bothering to defend us. Jeff Flake didn't hate Obama the way he hates Donald Trump because Obama didn't threaten the comfortable little sinecure that Flake had carved out for himself for so long. If you're Jeff Flake or Lindsey Graham or a dozen other Republican senators who secretly despise their own voters, the Obama years were a perfect time for you. You could complain about Democratic control of government in a low-grade way, play the role of a principled opposition, give a few floor speeches, do a few TV hits, and then go home. You didn't actually have to do anything or change anything. It was the political equivalent of a no-show job. It was nice work if you could get it. There's a reason Republicans haven't delivered a single major conservative law since welfare reform, and that was more than 20 years ago. No wonder guys like Jeff Flake loathe Trump. He called their bluff. Suddenly, Republicans have all the power. For the first time in decades, they could actually do what voters have consistently asked them to do for years. Secure the borders, this time for real. Slow the flood of immigration that is making America poorer, more crowded, and dangerously unstable. But they don't want to do that, mostly because their donors don't want them to do that. They can't admit that, of course, so they call Trump Stalin. Suddenly, it all makes sense. John Daniel Davidson is a senior correspondent at The Federalist, and he joins us tonight. John, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So Trump hates reporters. I can certainly see why reporters don't like that. I don't always like his criticisms of the press. They strike me, though, as less dangerous as an actual Stalinist dynamic where the press sucks up to people in power. And I'm struck by how common that was for the 8 years preceding this administration, and no one ever said anything about it. Why?
Well, you're absolutely right. You had reporters from mainstream outlets routinely take private meetings with President Obama and be fed stories and narratives, as the Obama administration liked to say, and then come back and regurgitate them point by point in support of whatever Obama administration policy was being sold to them that day. This was the standard operating procedure for major news outlets for 8 years. And now they have the Trump administration, which offends them and their sensibilities, and they're offended by the policies that the Trump administration is trying to push. And so they engage in this sort of hysterical, overblown criticism that we saw Jeff Flake kind of join in on today on the Senate floor.
I mean, Jeff Flake is a mediocrity, but I'm irrelevant. Is retiring. But I'm interested more in the reporters who really do shape our understanding of what's going on in the world. It seems weird to me that they're ignoring the actual crisis in free expression, which is real. So I've been in the workforce 26 years. There's never been a time in my lifetime where more people were fired more quickly for expressing their opinions in the workplace. This is an epidemic. I don't ever see coverage of that. Why?
Well, like you said before, the press chooses not to see that because all the people who are getting fired have the wrong views. You know, you look back to the firing of Brendan Eich at Mozilla as kind of a canary in the coal mine. You know, that seemed like a long time ago, but that was a harbinger of things to come that are very widespread with organizations like Facebook and Twitter that are essentially media organizations now that function like media organizations that have these draconian policies where they're obviously censoring views that they don't like. They're obviously don't really care about free expression. You saw these undercover videos of Twitter executives saying, oh yeah, we cooperate with the Chinese government in expelling, banning people from Twitter all the time. They're not really interested in free expression. And it's troubling to see just how disinterested they are and uninterested they are in the issue at all.
But they're the guardians, they're the opposite of what they ought to be. They're the guardians of orthodoxy rather than the defenders of heterodoxy. A journalist should instinctively take the side of the one guy who stands up with a different opinion. You saw James Damore at Google get fired for writing a pretty benign personal email or memo about diversity, and you saw the whole staff of Business Insider practically piled on and said, I'm glad he's gone. He's a threat to the Republic. What happened? Who are these people posing as journalists?
Well, you know, the one thing Jeff Flake gets wrong and the mainstream media gets wrong is that the number one, threat, if there's a main threat to our democracy when it comes to the media, it's that the media has totally thrown away its credibility with the American people. There was this Gallup poll out that showed more Americans have a negative view of the media than have a positive view of the media. That's not good for a democracy. We need to have a robust, credible media to hold power accountable and to inform the citizenry. And we don't have that right now because the media does not see itself as the guardians of free speech, the guardians of common Americans holding power accountable. They see themselves as, as you say, protectors of the status quo.
If they were half as skeptical of big business as they are of Donald Trump, we'd be a lot safer. I would be a lot happier. John, thank you.
Thank you.
Out of the way, birthers, there's a new presidential conspiracy theory. It's called the girther movement. It emerged yesterday after President Trump's doctor discussed his physical results, and he described the president's health as pretty good.
Age 71 years and 7 months at the time of the exam. Height 75 inches. Weight 239 pounds. I think the president, he and I talked, and he would like to lose over the next, I think a reasonable goal over the next year or so is to lose 10 to 15 pounds.
So it was a pretty good report, but it was immediately brushed aside by a lot of the press corps. They speculated about what hidden ailments the president might have. Watch.
But if that's what 6'3", 239 pounds looks like, it's a shock to me.
He seemed like a Trump fanboy.
When he said 239 pounds.
whatever. But I mean,
I know I'm being a girther, but I mean,
we know, as you mentioned, the president has high cholesterol. We know he has evidence of heart disease. We know he's borderline obese.
On his driver's license in New York, he was 6'2", and he suddenly grew with age.
Most old people shrink.
Yes, exactly.
The thing that's spurning sort of this girther movement is this idea that if he did in fact grow, that's part of the reason that he's not being considered obese. If he had been 1 inch shorter, then he would have met the BMI standards for obesity.
It shows you how physically cut off the press corps is from the rest of the country. Here's NBC producer Ken DeLion. Ken, we'll call him that. He demanded that Trump submit to a public weigh-in. He tweeted, seeing a lot of skepticism over the idea that Trump weighs only 239 pounds. Would he step on a scale in public to prove that? Brian Kilmeade is a host at Fox & Friends, author of the fantastic book, Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, and he joins us tonight. So, Brian, I mean, the one thing I learned from watching the coverage is most reporters live in neighborhoods without a single person who doesn't go to SoulCycle at least 4 times a week. They've never seen a fat person. They think Trump is obese.
Well, listen. He had a doctor, a real admiral, come out who impressed the Bush family and the Obama family and their respective staffs and didn't know Donald Trump at all before he ran for president and won the White House. He came out and said, here's a thorough exam. I mean, the same media corps that missed FDR's wheelchair and Woodrow Wilson's stroke and the back problems of JFK finally got a full exam and a 55-minute presser to follow where every question was answered, and they zero in on his height, which would reveal too much weight. Americans sometimes should lose 10 to 15 pounds. He is sadly healthy. This is the bad news for the press corps, as I understand it. This morning, Tucker, I thought the big story was the crazy questions asked of that doctor. Later on, when the show ends, I find out everyone doubts the validity and the sanctity of the doctor's comments, and they want a public weigh-in. If Hillary Clinton had won in this age of equality and political correctness, would we have done the pinch test on her? Would we have asked for her weight and demand a second source? This is incredible. In the age of political correctness, we are fat-shaming a president who simply has to lose 10 to 15 pounds. Were they rooting for disease? They were rooting for something to stop him from being president.
It just tells you everything about their world, where being 10 pounds overweight really is a sin, though. I mean, I actually think a lot of reporters are upset by this. The idea that, you know, a 71-year-old man might be mildly overweight, I mean, that's like worse than a war crime to them. I mean it.
I'll take it up a notch. From the group of people that wanted Jill Stein to contest the election because it was fraud, wrong. Then they wanted delegates to flip. That never happened. Then the Russia investigation ongoing hasn't yielded anything. Then the 25th Amendment fell flat on its face because the president's sane. And then all of a sudden it turns out he might live through his term and not die of an illness. And they are so upset they're demanding a recount. This is incredible. I mean, you can't have it every single way. I've never seen people so disappointed that he wasn't riddled with disease. And he, for some reason, I think at some point is watching your show and laughing out loud as he was that entire press conference.
I hope he's eating a cheeseburger and chasing it with the Three Musketeers bar. I do. I mean, there's something so transgressive about his eating habits in this age of macrobiotic orthodoxy. I just love it. Good for him. Brian Kilmeade, it is great to see you.
I don't know if you read the New York Times, but page 8 had the tax plan, the economic values, and the unemployment numbers, all good news. They might want to focus on that, not his weight, but I don't want to tell anyone what to focus on. That's what people might care about.
That's the spirit. Thank you, Brian. Great to see you.
See?
Chicago taking on the Trump administration in order to make its city better and lower its murder rate. Oh, just kidding. No, they're doing that for the sake of protecting illegal immigrants. A Chicago alderman who supports that joins us next. This is a Fox News alert. The Trump administration just announced the winners of the hotly anticipated fake news awards. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry is at the White House with the results on the red carpet. Hey, Ed.
Tucker, good to see you. As you know, there's been this anticipation. What will the president do? He's been teasing this out for a couple of weeks now. He's now listed about a dozen fake news stories, in his words, that he wants to highlight. We're going to run through the top 5, starting with number 5, the president calling out the Washington Post for, in his words, falsely reporting a massive sold-out rally in Pensacola, Florida, as being empty. He says a dishonest reporter showed a picture hours before the event started, and it was much, much bigger. Number 4, Time magazine falsely reporting that the president removed a bust of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office. Remember, this was something that Time reported literally day 1, day 2 of this administration. It was a fake story. Number 3, CNN, in the words of the president, falsely reporting that candidate Donald Trump and his son Donald Trump Jr. had access to hacked documents from WikiLeaks before the public did. That was not true. Had to be retracted as well. Number 2, the president going after ABC News' Brian Ross. In the president's words, in this thing just tweeted out, Brian Ross, quote, chokes and sends markets in a downward spiral with false report. Remember, that was about retired General Michael Flynn and pleading guilty to that charge of lying to the FBI. Brian Ross suggesting that this dated back to actual collusion in the campaign. That had to be walked back. That was not true. The stock market crashed on that initial fake news, the president calling that out. Finally, number 1 in the president's estimation for the 2017 Fake News Awards. I know you've been waiting for this, Tucker. The New York Times' Paul Krugman, the columnist, claiming on the day of the president's historic landslide victory, in the president's words, the economy would never recover. As you can see from the market activity today, announcements like Apple saying they're pouring a lot more money into this economy, bringing repatriated money back into the United States. That is something that the White House is crowing about tonight, Tucker.
Paul Krugman. Unbelievable. Ed, thank you.
Good to see you.
Great to see you. A group of Republican senators are pushing a DACA deal that would provide amnesty to about 2 million illegal immigrants. The proposal, which is being promoted by 7 Republicans, including Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, would offer a path to citizenship for all the so-called Dreamers, even those who weren't part of DACA. They'd be eligible for welfare after 5 years here. The diversity lottery would be, quote, abolished. But those visas would simply be reallocated to other programs with the same purpose. A little sleight of hand there for you. It even allows the parents of DACA recipients who illegally entered America as adults and caused this whole problem in the first place to get renewable work permits to stay in this country. If you care about borders, it is a terrible deal, really a parody of a bill, apparently designed to win over Democrats who are threatening to government shutdown over DACA. Congresswoman Martha McSally represents Arizona. She's running to replace Jeff Flake in the Senate, and she joins us tonight. Congresswoman, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
You're not only a member of Congress, you spent many years in uniform, many years.
Yep.
Over 20, I think. How do you feel about the Democrats saying basically out loud, provide amnesty or we're going to stop paying our troops?
It's infuriating, Tucker. This is the point I brought up in the White House meeting last week, and I was moved when I heard Dick Durbin say there's lives hanging in the balance or something like that, and I was like moved to jump in and say the only lives that are hanging in the balance right now are those of our military, the men and women that are serving overseas, putting their lives in harm's way. There is a fake deadline created by the Democrats holding them hostage, and while our troops are over there risking their lives for us, these guys are dicking around, excuse my language, trying to come up with some issue that's not even in a top 20 priority of the American people. So we need to look to more legislation like the bill I introduced last week that addresses the priorities of the American people. The border security,
yes,
ending chain migration, ending the visa lottery, addressing sanctuary cities, asylum reform, unaccompanied minor reform, E-Verify. This is a reasonable bill to address the root causes of DACA that we can continue to work on over the next few weeks and months. There is no crisis here. And they are holding our troops hostage for this issue that has nothing to do with funding our military. It's infuriating as somebody
So the bill that you're backing is literally mainstream in that its major components are right in the middle of the polling on the questions.
Exactly.
Okay, so, but the Senate,
the
Senate version, which is being supported, really driven by Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake. Lindsey Graham said to someone I know recently, Jeff Flake will do whatever I tell him to do. and a bunch of other Republican senators is very far from what you're proposing.
It is.
Can you win them to your side?
We have to. Look, this is the priority of the American people, and we worked for 4.5 months on this bill. If you look at the White House put out a document with 70 requests in it. We've worked through them all. This is not all of them. This is a very reasonable, prioritized proposal that focuses on security, first and foremost, of the American people, addresses the loopholes in our system. Some of them are creating threats like we've seen with the terrorist attacks in New York City. They have to be closed with the chain migration into visa lottery, the visa lottery system. It also ensures that if we're willing to do something on DACA, if we get to that place, that we are not finding ourselves in this situation again in another 1, 5, or 10 years. So it's a very reasonable approach. It should be the starting point, and that's where we need to sit down and negotiate in good faith.
Congresswoman Martha McSally of Arizona, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
Appreciate it. Trump administration investigating whether it can bring charges against the leaders of sanctuary cities. We'll ask a Chicago alderman whether that makes him reconsider his support for sanctuary in his city. Stay tuned. There could soon be a showdown in the city of Chicago over sanctuary city policies. Chicago has been one of the most aggressive places in the country in resisting the Trump administration's efforts against illegal immigration, and now its political leaders could potentially pay the price for that. The Department of Homeland Security has been asking federal prosecutors to investigate bringing charges against sanctuary city leaders across the country, including in Chicago. George Cardenas is an alderman in Chicago, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Cardenas, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for the invite, Tucker.
So I asked this question to everybody who supports the policies that you support, but I think it's particularly poignant since you're an alderman in Chicago, which has a famously high murder rate and is teetering on the edge of insolvency as a city. How will protecting the rights, so-called rights, of illegal immigrants in your city help the citizens of Chicago, the citizens, American citizens who live there?
Well, let me say, Tucker, first and correct it. We're not near insolvency. That's wholly not true. We just passed the budget a couple of months ago.
Tell me about the retirement liabilities that the city of Chicago has, and which remain unfunded to this day. I mean, that's a separate segment. But anybody who lives in Chicago is laughing at what you just said. I mean, no,
we're paying our pension liabilities. We do have a problem with, just like in many other cities, by the way, we're not the only ones that are facing looming pension liabilities. So
no, you're not. You're not the only. You actually have one of the biggest problems in the country. It's not the only problem. But my only point is, Chicago is a great city. I love Chicago. But it's got a lot of real problems.
It is a great city, Tucker.
It is a great city.
We got problems. We're solving the problems.
Okay, but how is this helping? That's the question.
No, I mean, I know you were trying to help it, but I'm just trying to correct it. It's just we're not insolvent. We are, we just passed a property tax, which it helped balance the budget. We're paying our pension liabilities.
Okay,
our credit rating has gone up.
Good for you for trying. I mean, and I hope it works.
No, I mean, it is true. Our credit rating is going up.
It's great. But let's get back to the question of how all the energy you're putting in to helping people who shouldn't be here in the first place is benefiting the citizens, the American citizens of Chicago. Why should they be happy about this?
Well, you know what? Here, Tucker, we help. Look, I'm an alderman, but my constituents are varied. There's Chinese, there's Lithuanians, there's Polish, they're Mexican, they're from various parts of the world. I don't check their status when they come and ask me for for help. It's un-American. It's not what I do. I wouldn't do it to anyone.
What's American is to help.
I see people and help.
No. So your job, but I want to be clear on this. So your job is to help any citizen of the world who asks for your help?
People come to my office for help on various sorts of things, services, and my office helps those people that come through the door.
So you don't think you have a special obligation to the citizens of this country? Your obligation is the same for the citizen of Bangladesh as it is for the citizen of America?
No, but I don't have any citizens from Bangladesh. But here
Name
again,
a country. I'm saying you don't have a special obligation to American citizens?
I'm not checking citizenship status.
Well, of course you are. You're protecting. Yes, you are. You're actually protecting.
I mean, I'm not checking.
This whole policy protects specifically people who are not here
whether
legally.
they are citizens or not. Most of the people that I represent are citizens, but whether it means, I'm not checking at the door their IDs to see if they're citizens or not.
Okay, let's play a game where you answer at least one question that I ask you. So do you think, let's start with this one.
I'm answering. I think.
Hold on. Do you think, here's the question, and let's see if you can answer it. Do you think that you have an obligation to represent American citizens first above people who are here illegally?
I represent my citizens very well, thank you, Tucker. Everyone that comes through that door.
Okay, so you weren't willing to answer that
loves the service.
So let's try a second one.
You want me somehow to equate that with? No, seriously. You want me somehow to guess? And you want me to just guess what? Because they have to be blue-eyed and blonde to be able to say, okay, you're American.
I mean, look, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous that you would even say something like that.
I'm just saying. I mean, that's is that your test for citizenship? I don't know. I can't tell.
You know what a loathsome little demagogue you are to say something like that.
No, I'm saying. I mean, how do you want me to ask?
Little demagogue you are.
How do you want me to ask,
Mr. Cardenas?
How do you want me to ask whether they're citizens or not?
I want you to answer my question simply.
I'm answering it.
Do you have an obligation to American citizens of any color over people who are here illegally? It's really simple. Can you answer
all my obligations, Tucker. I meet all my obligations to the people that from the entire city, people that I meet on the streets as well.
How do American citizens benefit from protecting illegal aliens in Chicago?
I could tell you, everybody here in this city knows that we are here and we protect everyone. We're here for the security. We're here for the benefit. And I don't check.
How do American citizens, so if I live on the South Side and I've got one of the highest murder rates in America and people are getting killed on my block, and this is real, as you know, why should I be happy that you're spending your time, including on this show, defending the rights of people who don't have a right to be here in the first place? Why should I be happy about that? Simple question. What's the answer?
Listen, again, you're throwing words out as if they mean anything. They don't. I mean, people that come through the door, it's because they live in the community. They're looking for services, looking for help. Again, we're not immigration. We're not checking whether the status, whether you're not or not.
Because you don't have a real answer. When pressed, none of you guys have a real answer. You bring it to race. You accuse the person asking you of racism, as you just did with me. You don't have a real answer. You're going to lose this debate.
What am I supposed to be asking?
Because this is demagoguery. It's really simple. American citizens have a right to have their interests first. You don't agree with that. You can't tell me how this benefits American citizens. You accuse me of racism.
You know, but Tucker, Americans are there black Americans? They're
it's
Asian
not about
Americans,
race. It's about citizenship.
They're Polish Americans. But you're asking me somehow to know whether that person, is a citizen or not. I don't have.
I'm not asking you to know. I'm asking you to care. I'm asking you to care about American citizens. No, you don't.
I'm telling you, why would I not care? Why would I not care?
But I'm asking you, as an American citizen, there's a finite amount of money in Chicago, a finite amount of time that its aldermen have. Why should I, as a citizen, be happy that you're spending your time and my money protecting people who don't have a right to be here? And you can't answer that question.
How do you know? How do you know we're protecting? They're not protecting. They're protecting those people. How do you know that?
We're getting into the circular part of the debate. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Cardenas. I appreciate it. A class at Ohio State revolves around how straight white men are privileged and, needless to say, evil. How are Democrats going to get any votes from anybody ever who fits that description if they keep attacking them in public? We'll talk to someone who thinks about these questions next. A class this spring at Ohio State University is dedicated to what it clearly regards as the biggest problem in a country with a lot of problems. Of course, it's straight white men. Be a Man, Masculinities, Race, and Nation is the name of the class, and it will, needless to say, attack white men for their privilege in a whole bunch of ways. Readings have titles like Advertising and the Construction of Violent White Masculinity. Of course, appears to revolve around how white men have victimized everybody else since the beginning of time. Christy Setzer is the president of New Heights Communication. She's a longtime Democrat who thinks deeply about these issues, and she joins us tonight. So here's my question, Christy, without getting into just how unbelievably awful every single straight white man is.
Clearly.
I think that goes without saying. As an electoral strategy, this has become really common on the left, even from elected officials in the Democratic Party dismissing white men as bad, prima facie bad. Isn't it kind of bad politics to, tell tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that you hate them for who they are? They're never going to vote for you. Why would you do that?
So that Ohio State professor was not tapped to write policy the last time I checked.
Right.
I don't see any policies coming out of the Democratic Party that are meant to demonize white men.
Oh, really? So, just, I guess, all of them, beginning with affirmative action and hiring set-asides and all that. But it's not, you're right, but it's not just Ohio State. The senior elected Democrat in the House of Representatives last week attacked the negotiations over DACA only because they were being led by, quote, 5 white men, as if that was like inherently discrediting.
Okay, so that is something different, and that is something that I think that Trump brings up for a lot of people, which is that he has, in his 1 year in office already, made the least diverse cabinet in a generation. His court appointments have been almost exclusively white male, something like 91%. So if you look at that as a woman, you think, Now, obviously, white men are not the only people on the planet. I also don't believe that they should be the only people in positions of power, but President Trump does seem to feel this way.
Well, I don't know. I mean, but you're not supposed to attack people on the basis of things they can't control, like their sex and their race. Those were the rules.
Sure.
And if all of a sudden you have elected officials openly attacking people, not because of things they've said or things they've done, beliefs they have, but on the basis of their sex and race, that's profoundly alienating to people of the same race and sex, or maybe even other people of good conscience. Do you see?
Right, like maybe saying that people from certain African countries are probably could all be seen the same way and not in a very positive way.
I don't think he said that. I think he attacked the country. Whatever. But I mean, I guess if you don't like that kind of talk, then why engage in it? I guess that's my question. I mean, so Trump says naughty things is not really an answer, and this is everywhere in the Democratic Party. I mean, I've got a whole list of Democratic officials attacking white men for being white men. What's the idea here? What are you getting out of it?
They're not attacking white men for being white men. They're attacking the idea that things are not diverse, and that if we want to actually have sincere conversations in America about, I don't know, the way things are and the way we can improve our country, then we actually have to listen to more voices than just those of
Oh, okay. So here's Sally Boynton Brown. She was running for DNC chair. She runs the Democratic Party in a state in Idaho. She said, my job is to be someone who shuts up other white people, shuts them down. Really?
Right. So I remember that comment, and that was kind of a stupid comment. But what she meant by that was sometimes the people in power need to just sit back and do some listening as opposed to all the talking. And
No,
I can
but she's
understand
saying not every white man is in power. In fact, the life expectancy for a lot of white men is going down. That's not true for any other group. There are a lot of white men who have no power at all. In fact, they're dying younger than other people. So I guess it's the assumption that because of your race and sex you somehow have power is itself the definition of racist. I think we both agree. So why say that crap in public? Like, what's the point of it?
I think that was a pretty dumb statement that she made. But again, the sentiment behind it, I think, is one that we can agree with, which is that, you know, sometimes the people in power need to be doing the listening instead of the talking.
Well, I completely agree with that. I mean, I feel that way about Nancy Pelosi, who's held power for too long, and she can shh and listen. But it's not about her race or sex. Bottom line, how can a party that attacks people on the basis of their race expect to win any votes from those people? Like, is there a calculation?
Again, I don't believe that the Democratic Party does attack people on the basis of their race. I think that's actually something that we've seen a lot from the Republican Party.
Wow. I mean, we may be living in different countries because I see it a lot. Christy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tucker.
Bill de Blasio's regime in New York is suing oil companies over climate change. We talked to an activist who says it's okay to break the law to fight climate change. He's going to join us next with a new understanding of the law. Stay tuned.